In this video we are discussing some basic JavaScript concepts that comes handy for JavaScript developers. We are discussing scope, 3 different types of it, closure and hoisting, all in less than 5 minutes. So let's get started. Let's start with scope. Scope is about variable visibility. Depending on where you declare your variable in the code, other pieces of the code may or may not have access to that variable. First one we are discussing here is function scope. A variable declared inside a function is not accessible outside function. See this piece of code on the screen. The variable message declared inside the function is not available outside the function, and that is because of function scope. Another important thing to note here is that the function scope works same whether it is a let, a var, or a constant used to declare the variable. Now the block scope. Block usually refers to a block of code inside a parenthesis. Here the variable declared inside a block is available only inside block when it is a let or a constant used to declare the variable. The thing to note here is that the var behaves differently, and the var is available even outside the block. We need to be careful when we use a var in a for loop, because the last value of var will be available even after the for loop. The last is the lexical scope. When you have a nested function in JavaScript, the inner function is lexically bound to the scope of the outer functions. That is, in simple language, the variables in the outer function scope is available for the inner function. That leads us to another feature in JavaScript named closure. And closure is a special kind of object that combines two things, a function and the environment in which that function was created. The environment consists of any local variables that were in scope at the time that the closure was created. In other words, the object consists of the function and its lexical scope, as you see in the example on the screen. The new function, which is in fact the inner function, has the variable 1, which is function scope, to outer function in its scope. Now we will move on to hoisting. See this piece of code in example 1, there is a variable named vehicle declared, the value assigned is car, and then we are writing it to the console. Everything works fine. The problem happens when we are reversing the order of the two statements as shown in example 2. There, we are trying to console log the variable, even before it is declared. But instead of a reference error, what we will get is undefined. This weird behavior is called hoisting. When JavaScript is interpreting the code, what it does is, as shown in example 3, it hoists the declaration part of it and leaves behind the assignment. So the 2-line code on the left will get converted into something like what is shown on the right, even before execution, and that explains this behavior. Another point to note here is that hoisting is not happening when we are using a let or a constant to declare our variables. That brings us to functions. A function, even if it is called before a declaration, it gets hoisted by the JavaScript interpreter. So if you have a function sing, you can call it even before it is declared. But the story is a little different when it comes to a function expression. In the case of a function expression, when we are using a variable, the declaration alone gets hoisted. And while execution, the interpreter won't be able to recognize the variable as associated to a function. Then in the case of a let or a constant, it won't be hoisted, as we discussed earlier. These are some of the fundamental things that you need to know if you are a JavaScript developer. Thanks for watching, and please consider subscribing. See you soon with another video.